Revered still to this day, Silent Hill 2 is widely considered to be one of the finest examples of both video game narrative and interactive horror, a sentiment that I very much agree with. A surrealist amalgamation of the tangible, tactile horrors of the body, of the self, flesh and blood, man and monsters, of rust and rot and decay, the degradation of the mind manifested as the town itself and the monsters that roam it. Elegant in both ethereal melancholy and raw, visceral brutality. Now, these are all things which have been discussed at length by people far more interesting and talented than myself, and I'm not just going to repeat their work back in my own words. No, in this video I want to focus on the foundation that horror in Silent Hill 2 is built upon. That crucial opening moment that is so integral to establishing how the horror will develop, how the narrative will progress, and how the player will be played with. From a quiet moment of visual introspection, we are presented with a deliberately vague setup. We will be playing as James Sunderland, who has come to Silent Hill with a degree of trepidation. He is searching for his dead wife.
I got a letter. The name on the envelope said, Mary. My wife's name. It's ridiculous. Couldn't possibly be true.
Now, with an ambiguous and uncertain goal, and only one direction to travel, the game begins. And it is this following section that I want to focus on, because the goal is very, very simple. Follow the path. Just walk. There is nothing to sidetrack the player, to draw one's focus elsewhere, nothing to interact with. There's nothing else to do. Just walk. And walk. It's during this curious push forward, this tentative step into unease, that the series' probably most iconic element becomes increasingly apparent. The fog. An almost viscous wall of grey unknown is perpetually just in front of you, far away enough that you maintain a sense of direction, but close enough to conceal something, if indeed there is something. Thus we delve into one of my favourite concepts to pick apart, fear of the unknown. I feel that this moment is a key example of that ever so popular phrase, what you don't see is scarier than what you do see, though not for the most immediately obvious of reasons. This quote, or the general concept, is derived from the famous quote by author H.P. Lovecraft: "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." I find that the phrase is used quite flippantly, though I do agree with the general concept. Our mind is our worst enemy. However, whilst, yes, you could reasonably put a player or a person in an empty room, enveloped by suffocating darkness, and simply let the paranoia manifest and take hold, there is still nothing there. I've never truly felt that initial paranoia can sustain itself. Curiosity and rationality take the lead, and so eventually, with nothing there, there is ultimately nothing to be afraid of. What I've always personally taken from Lovecraft's quote is not the unknown being some abstraction, nothingness or a lack of something. No, the unknown in this case I find to be more of a process, a manifestation, a consciousness. As you walk down the path, the air groaning as the fog starves the eyes, the unknown begins as that abstraction, and paranoia naturally takes hold. And this is effective, don't take me wrong here. However, that fear of the abstract unknown is only then made valid by something. That sound. Sound design is crucial for horror games, but I don't mean that in terms of the more conceptual, artistic, ambient sense. I mean more in terms of mechanics. Specific enemies make specific noises to give players both some understanding of what they're up against and then the knowledge to assess and recognize an upcoming threat. These are often sounds we have some familiarity with and understanding of. Low, animalistic growling, breathing, footsteps, screaming. These are sounds that, even if distorted and made to sound distinctly other, we still recognize. However, this sound does not give us the comfort of being able to recognize or understand it. There is nothing I can attribute this sound to because it doesn't sound like anything I have ever heard before. But it is something. And it is unknown. Is it machinery? Mechanical maybe? Or is it living? Organic? Is it a threat? Is the noise vocal? Or movement? Is it aware of me? We don't know. Because this sound is unlike any other. It is the unknown made manifest. The only way to truly know the source of the sound is to see it, but the fog. In Bernard Perrin's study of the series as a whole, Silent Hill: The Terror Engine, he quotes Paul Wells' explanation that the most persuasive horror is the one suggested by the mind of the viewer and the gamer, rather than that which is explicitly expressed on the screen, knowing that there is something present, the presence of an unknown. Now the fog isn't just some thick ambient obscuration, it both conceals and harbours a potential threat. Akihiro Imamura, the lead designer for Silent Hill and a producer of Silent Hill 2, explained in an interview that fear could be defined in terms of what you don't see makes you feel afraid. If you know that there is something around you that you can't see, you'll be scared, deep down. And just as I felt from Lovecraft before him, Imamura is presenting the unknown as something. And so, we are, as Imamura stated, scared, deep down. And it just goes on and on and on and on, both unknowns now working in tandem, relentless in its oppressiveness for what feels like an unreasonably long time. This moment is also specifically referenced in the making of Silent Hill 2. Sequences that might seem overlong were made so deliberately to convey a feeling of isolation. At the beginning of the game, we deliberately made the descent through the forest longer. It's so long you don't feel like turning back. It makes you realize just how totally isolated you are. Eventually, of course, you reach the end of the path, at which point the thought may occur to you, as it did me, that nothing happened. Nothing happened. You reach a save point, a purely pragmatic design decision, surely. I mean, it is a long, albeit straightforward sequence to lose progress to after all. However, this is an example of something seemingly innocuous that makes the sequence retroactively scarier. Because by being granted the reprieve of a save point here, does that not suggest that there may have been something worth being afraid of after all? The sheer level of paranoia that this sequence, this endurance test, invokes from layers of conceptual fear building and overlapping is why I believe it to be such a prime example of fear of the unknown in its purest form. Capturing the unknown as some abstract sense of isolation before manifesting that unknown into something unknowable. Both paranoias compounding into an oppressive embrace. Revered still to this day, Silent Hill 2 is widely considered to be one of the finest examples of both video game narrative and interactive horror. This is a game which elegantly and respectfully deals with such heavy and delicate themes like repression, lust, murder, suicide, sexual assault, rape, framed within the degradation of the mind manifesting as a steady escalation of rot and decay, of flesh and metal and rust, nonsensical geometry giving way to maddening descents and distressing confrontations, self-reflection and admissions of guilt seen as literal personal demons. And the foundation for all of that, the setup that informs the descending horror of the rest of the experience, is achieved by giving the player one seemingly innocuous and straightforward goal. Just follow the path.